Aren't you such a sweet little kitty? Hi, all you lovely human beings. It's Renee, and today we have a special guest on the show. His name is Timmy. Alright, well, Timmy has perched himself right there. So he's off to the side now. So, now that he's at attention and we're all at attention, let's get into today's topic. So, I want to talk about emotional support from others. There's two kinds of, support you can get when you're dealing with things in life, with mental health or trauma. So there's professional help, which is of course, going to a doctor, maybe getting different treatments, meds maybe, and of course there's going to a therapist, just to use one of the many techniques that therapists use to help you sort of work through things. I am neither a doctor nor a therapist, so I have no professional training in those fields, but something I can speak to is sort of more of the non-professional support. So, say you're having a rough day and you call up your best friend and vent to them. That's an example of non-professional support in with anything really. It doesn't even have to be a full-blown mental health thing. It could just be a shitty day at work, or just an ex who won't leave you alone, or just you not leaving an ex alone. Totally not guilty. And just things like that. Let's talk about this. So, your friend is your friend for a reason, right? They're around you because they chose to want to be in your life. They chose you as a person to be your friend. And now, especially in Western cultures, this is really a big thing here in the United States. This emphasis on individualism and being able to take care of yourself and being independent and being strong and being fierce and doing everything on your own and being self-made and all that kind of stuff. While that can be an empowering sensation, for instance, I'm a firm believer in just the liberating idea of, if you're in a really abusive relationship, that process of getting out. I really respect the strength of anyone who can accomplish that, myself included. However, our society's emphasis on sort of this independence has led to a lot of sort of cutthroat things. People don't care about each other as much. It's developed a very sort of siloed mentality among people that if it doesn't affect them, they shouldn't have to worry about it. And this has caused a lot of problems with things as I'm very well familiar with trans issues. A lot of people are oh, well, I'm not transgender, or I don't have a transgender relative or whatever. Side note, you probably do. Why should I care about transgender people if I'm not one, or I don't know one? Well, I'm glad you asked. However, we won't get to that particular topic at this time, but maybe in a future video. What I'm really getting at here is this thing we call mutual aid. And now, it's kind of been a thing that's really been developing a lot in the LGBTQ spaces. It's a pretty ancient thing if you think about it. Back when if you look at like just ancient times, you know, humans lived in small villages and usually weren't really connected with the outside world, but like people took care of each other. You know, it's like you think of the phrase, it takes a village. Well, where did that come from? You know, like think about that. Like, I think it's really important, and we need to start as the human species, we need to go back to this, because this is one aspect of our roots that we have very much left behind. This belief that, you know, I can take care of my fellow human being. If this human is struggling and I have extra of something that they need, I don't need that, but they do. Now, before you go in the comments and say, I'm like, this is about politics, and I'm like advertising communist propaganda or something. We might get to that in a later video as well. This isn't about like our world economy of like physical, like we're not talking about like material things like wealth or food or whatever resources that people physically need. I am talking specifically about sort of an emotional economies. And now, as you might expect, there are some differences between the way a material economy works and emotional economy works. There's some similarities, but there's also enough differences that I feel like this needs mentioning. For one thing, human interactions are complicated. Buying something at the store is as simple as handing someone you barely know money and getting like food in return. But if your friend is struggling, you know, this is a person you care deeply about. You really want to see them feel better. All I can say is, if it's something serious, I think if someone's talking about something and it's stressing them out, I think it's important to understand the difference between what they can control and what they can't control, and also what you can control and what you can't control. One thing I found that people tend to do, especially if they don't know a lot about mental health, is they try to come up with solutions. They try to solve that person's problems. They try to fix it. They try to, you know, it looks so easy to me, so why isn't it this easy to you? And, you know, sort of that sort of mentality of, oh, well, the solution's easy, just stop being depressed. Like, don't say that. Don't ever say that to anyone. Really, when a person is struggling emotionally, unless maybe they specifically ask you for a solution to something that has kind of a concrete answer, it's better to just be there. Let them know that you care about them. Even if you think they know, just remind them. Remind them that they are loved and that they're important to you. And remind them what you like about them and why you enjoy hanging out with them. You know, so many people are like, well, they should just know. Well, thing about like things like depression and anxiety or any sort of mental state is a lot of times those things can make you forget why, you know, you don't spend a lot of time thinking about why you might be important to someone else. And sometimes just a reminder, just a friendly reminder, can make someone's day. It's just wonderful. Just being there for someone, realizing that not all problems have definite solutions, that life is complicated, human brains are complicated, and that just some circumstances that someone might be in just might be complicated. Or, like, emotionally, they're not in a space where they can look at, like, what to do next. Like, sometimes people just need to process and just sit through it, and that's just how it is. You can't rush that process. They can't rush that process, and you as a separate human being definitely can't rush that process. I mean, I've tried to rush that process on myself, but if I at all achieve any level of success with that, it comes back to bite me later, because I didn't have a chance to emotionally process it adequately the first time. And so that's really just my message today, is just look out for people, make sure they know you care. If you have the emotional, like, if you're not emotionally already feeling, overwhelmed yourself, that's the other big thing about if someone is seeking help from you, or just support, or just talking to you about whatever, is make sure you're always putting your self-care first. Now, this doesn't mean being rude to them, but it does mean, if you need to set boundaries, if you need to have some space so that you can recover, that's totally okay too. That's just as valid as whatever it is they're feeling. And just hope they can get what they need through other means. Because life isn't perfect, and we can't always be there for everyone we love. We're not always 100% ourselves. And that's just life. But I think it is important that we show kindness and empathy instead of jumping to trying to fix someone's problems for them. Like, honestly, I can't speak for everyone who struggles with things, but for me personally, I oftentimes feel like I'm better at solving problems myself than anybody else who tries to come in and do everything for me. Like, that just kind of makes me frustrated, and just kind of makes me overwhelmed, and it doesn't feel like things are being solved adequately, because I'm the kind of person who definitely needs to vent about emotions to other people. Like, I can't keep that shit in. But when it comes down to actually, okay, well, now what am I going to do? I consider myself the leading expert at making final decisions on my problems and what I want to do for myself. As far as I'm concerned, anything recommended by my doctors or my therapist, that kind of stuff is sacred. But if I get a suggestion from anyone else who's not professionally qualified, I take a grain of salt and maybe consider it if I think it will fit, but I make sure it's up to me, because I value my autonomy, and I think it's really important, because only I can know what is a good decision for me. And of course, consulting experts and listening to them is a very important part of running myself, my life, or just anything like that, So of course I'm going to listen to my doctors, my therapists, and follow their advice. And now if I disagree with their advice, I can ask them for clarification, or I can, you know, I can have a discussion with them. I mean, or I can switch providers. Like I just switched to a new like primary care doctor last year because I just needed one who would listen to me. Maybe listen to me and maybe do more for some of the chronic issues I was having. And it's really been something that's paid off, I think. Same goes with like a therapist, especially. Like if you're going to therapy and you're just not getting along with your therapist, you know? Totally, you have the right. You hired that therapist, you can fire them too. And find a new one. Find one that fits your personality and works more in with what you want to accomplish in life. Several of my friends have just switched therapists recently and found better ones for them, and it's a really liberating thing. And if you're seeing a therapist and it doesn't seem to be helping, I totally recommend finding a new one instead of, you know, trying to push through or just giving up or whatever your first instincts may be. Trust me, I've had those kind of instincts before too, so you're not alone. But in other words, my message is don't give up. Don't be afraid to rely on others for support. You're not a burden. There are people out there who care about you and want to help you. And if someone asks for support, just getting through something, as sometimes it's just a matter of sitting there and listening. And that, you know, if you don't have all the answers, you don't need to have all the answers. Being there is enough for most people. So, thank you for listening, and this video is, I guess, kind of dedicated to my friends, Haley and Sarah, and also Sarah's husband, Nate, for, you know, taking the time to watch my other videos, and like my 2 videos that I made in January, and telling me how much they love them, and encouraging me to sort of get back into making them again. So here I am in April now, thanks to you 3. I'm continuing and making new videos again. So yeah, so thank you for watching, everyone, and I'll be back with more. Oh, you're such a good kitty. Such a good boy, Timmy. You're a good kitty bear.